Hi, and welcome to today's Fit Pro education session. I've got my good friend and money mindset mentor, Billy Hofactor, here with me, and we're going to get some hard facts on how fitness professionals can separate their personal and business finances. Billy, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. I am so excited. I couldn't sleep last night because I knew we were going to help a lot of people today with this content. In fact, I don't know if anybody's going to see this if we're doing video, but I got my coach shirt on. So I'm ready to rock, ready to coach.
Nice.
And I'm really excited to give people some more clarity and help them just improve their finances and become more successful, whatever that means to them.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this knowledge because it's not outside of people like Dave Ramsey, it's not in our industry and I know people need it. I have so many conversations where, if it's tax debt, if it's credit card debt, if it's planning for new equipment, people have questions and need clarity. So on your end, like why is it important that we have separate accounts, separate let's call it guardrails for our finances?
I'm going to do something that I'm going to give you the science behind it. This is called the hook. So I'm trying to grab your attention. And maybe this works, maybe it doesn't. They say that stories sell and facts just tell. I am going to share a fact, but I'm hoping that it sells just like a story could, because this is a story. It's the numbers behind the story. This is the idea that 82% of small businesses, it's probably even more when it comes to the fitness industry, 82% fail because why? It's not because they're not profitable, which is so shocking to people. You would think, oh, it's
Mhm.
because they're not profitable. And yeah, that's definitely part of it. But the reason that they fail is a lack of understanding their numbers and poor cash flow management. I can't think of a better way to describe poor cash flow management than not separating your personal and your business finances.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And as a professional, like you just think about things differently because I have a lot of friends that have recently gone like independent, not necessarily in fitness, but in various things, some in fitness. And what I often share to them is like, listen, like we can't bill our hourly rate. Like we have a lot of things we're paying for outside of that within our services. So obviously you got to start with appropriate pricing and from there, manage it appropriately. So yeah, with the cash flow management, what's a simple tip people can do is like, 2 to 3 steps forward to gain traction with making separation with their personal and business finances.
That's awesome. I know we don't have a ton of time here, but I'm going to speak to what you just said briefly because I think it's really important when it comes to pricing. This is like high level. Of course, if anyone wants to dive in deeper, we can. But
Yeah.
from a high level perspective, I agree with you. I think too many people do not think through their pricing. And there's two things that I recommend. One is when you're figuring things out, you're going to want to figure out what are your baseline operating expenses. So, what does it cost you to keep your doors open? Those can be physical doors or virtual doors. You have some quote unquote expenses that you are using to run your business. And what happens oftentimes is that owners they calculate all of those, but they don't calculate how much they need to pay themselves. So I'm going to encourage you to put the amount you're going to pay yourself into your operating expenses. That's a good starting point. And then when you figure out your pricing, okay, I'm doing 20 sessions a week, you do that total number, which includes the cost of you as an employee of your business. You divide that by the hours you're going to be operating, and voila, you have a number that you can charge, and you know that you will be compensated for. If you leave that number out, you're always going to be trying to figure out like how can I make more and how can I get this squared
Mhm.
away. And the other point is what you said. It's factoring in all of the expenses. It's a similar point. It's just not losing sight of what it actually costs to run a business. A lot of costs that are left out when people are trying to figure this out. They might think of things like their rent, but they're not calculating all that goes into it. How much time are you spending getting ready for the session, or maybe you're traveling to the session? What are all the
Mhm.
resources? What do you have to do? Brainstorm. What are all the things I have to do to deliver the service? And you need to make sure that you're calculating that in when you're figuring out how much you make. Because a lot of people think they make 50 bucks an hour,
Right.
and you're like, they got another thing coming when they realize, yeah, they're charging $50 an hour,
Yeah.
but actually the session's an hour. They're prepping for an hour, and they're doing all these other things. And then you
Mhm.
start doing the real math, and you're like, yeah, you actually make like $7 an hour. And I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad, but just a good wake up call to think about how much we're actually making, because then you can make better decisions. And I didn't really ask me, but that's the main purpose of this, is to make better, more strategic, clearer decisions. So many people are just like throwing stuff at the wall. They're just doing these random
Yeah.
things, and we want to be a lot more calculated. But three steps I'll give you that you can get started right away on this, because we want this to be full of action. You can leave this meeting and you could do these steps immediately. Some of these you may have done, but I would encourage you to look at them and figure out how can you make them better. Because even now, I've been in business so long and I teach this stuff, I can either a slip back into poor habits, or new things pop up and I can improve what I'm doing. Number one, you want to make sure that you have separate bank accounts. Ideally, there's the personal accounts and there are the business accounts, and they are totally separate. Even as a worst case scenario, you're just starting out and you're maybe a sole proprietor. Even at that point, separating the income and the expenses that are happening in each is
Absolutely.
absolutely crucial. It is next to impossible to know what's going on with your books when you are not completely separating your business and your personal finances. You're going to want to make sure you do not co-mingle your finances. This is common. Hopefully, there are people listening that aren't in the fitness industry. This is common in every industry. This is one of the biggest issues. And secondly, even if you have them separated, are they separated? Are you really buying business things with your business account, buying personal things with your personal account? You want to make sure that you keep those clearly set. Make a rule for yourself. I don't buy things for my business with my personal account. I don't buy things for my personal life with my business account. Second piece, make sure that you're tracking. Yes, you want to forecast and budget and plan, but you also want to make sure you're tracking your expenses. Maybe you're just starting out, you don't have any fancy software. For now, use a spreadsheet. It's 100 times better than doing nothing. As you move a little bit further along, you'll want to get to a more robust system. Something like QuickBooks Online is what I use for all of my clients. It's a really great way to track your expenses, put everything in the proper categories, because you want to make sure that you know what's going where. You can make decisions. You know, this is being spent in marketing, this is being spent on payroll. You want to make sure that everything is categorized properly. And then the third piece I already mentioned, and I'll say it again because it's that important, it is to pay yourself a salary. And I don't care how much it is. Don't make the mistake of thinking because I can't pay myself $100,000, I'm not going to pay myself anything. You have to pay yourself $100 before you can pay yourself $100,000. That was a good quote right there, by the way. Drew, you're muted.
Yeah, no, that's great. I haven't heard it that way. Usually it's like my goal is to make, $80 an hour. But if you're like, hey, my goal is to pay myself 50 grand a year, and then you reverse engineer your annual revenue
Mhm.
goals, like that's a much better way to think than how much can I bill, for this session. So yeah, I appreciate that, Billy. And those are some really good actionable steps for people to get started. I'm curious, like if someone's looking for like some specific help on this, if they've got, hey, I've got this credit card and I'm trying to pay this and I've got these extra resources, is there a way that they can reach out to you to just get some clarity?
Absolutely. I'm so excited. One of the most my most favorite things I do with people is I do what's called a profit clarity session, and that allows us to sit down together. And those sessions can last up to an hour, because lots of times, and this is something I've learned in my business over time, I used to try to take the easy way out and say, "Oh, let me just get on with you for 15 minutes and just figure out, give you some advice." I found that for 99% of people, it's just not possible. There's just too many moving parts. There's lots of things that come up that they didn't even think of as we're going through this customized profit clarity session. It's one of my favorite things to do because I get to really know the person and I hopefully develop some trust with them. And then therefore I can give them some solutions and some guidance.
Awesome. No, great, great. Well, I will make sure that the Fit Pros that I and business owners that I work with get that information because it's so helpful. Like I know, like I shared, you've helped me with many things finance wise, from like reading your book 3 years ago to the specific help lately. So, yeah, man, I really appreciate it. Thanks for showing up the way you are and appreciate this insight today.
You got it. And if anybody wants a copy of the book you're talking about, it's Fitness Profits. I have a link for that as well, free digital download, and that's the method I use to pay off $470,000, and it'll work for anybody.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, yeah, I'll make sure I get that out as well. So I appreciate you, Billy. We'll talk soon. Okay.
Sounds great, brother. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.